Hello, good evening and welcome to Biz1st Review 360, the pulse of Sri Lankan business. I'm Nadim Majid. Let's get on with tonight's program. Our focus tonight, of course, is the 2017 budget. The Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, the largest business chamber in the country, has backed proposals in the budget intended to cut the deficit to 4.6% of GDP in 2017. However, the chamber has warned the government against interference with business, especially through the proposal to limit regional plantation companies to 5,000 acres. The Ceylon Chamber of Commerce says Budget 2017 has signalled continuity in economic policy priorities and focused on modernizing the economy, inclusive growth, strengthening the middle class and rebalancing towards an export and private investment-backed economic trajectory. The government planned to cut the budget deficit to 4.6% of gross domestic product in 2017 from 5.4% this year and raise revenues to 13.5% of GDP. The revenue to GDP ratio is estimated to be around 12.9% in 2016. The Ceylon Chamber of Commerce says it's confident that the tax revenue measures proposed in the budget are attainable if implementation is carried out successfully. The statement from the chamber read, quote, "Measures to enhance direct tax revenue collection by ending some tax exemptions will help fiscal consolidation and rebalance tax collection towards a greater direct tax contribution." Unquote. The chamber has also warned the government on interference in business and the need to consult relevant stakeholders before implementing new measures. The statement read, quote, "The proposal to limit the regional plantation companies to 5,000 acres needs careful reconsideration, as many are Colombo Stock Exchange listed entities and this proposal will have strong implications on their business structure." Unquote. In the aftermath of the 2017 budget speech, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has renewed his call for the private sector to work closely with the government in order to achieve the 7% growth rate next year.
Delivering the keynote address at the Business Today Top 30 award ceremony in Colombo, Premier Ranil Wickremesinghe urged the private sector to join hands with the government to propel economic growth and become a competitive market economy.
There's one big venture the government is going to launch, a joint venture. That will be with the government. It's a public-private partnership. It will be with the government, the private sector, big and small, the workers, the farmers and the self-employed. Let's go down that road. We all become stakeholders. Let us succeed. We want you to join with us, create new markets. Because this market of 3 billion people will expand it further for another billion, will also make us the hub of the Indian Ocean. Very, very competitive.
Premier Wickremesinghe's comments were partly in response to remarks made by business tycoon Harry Jayawardena, who urged Wickremesinghe to take into confidence the private sector for better decision-making on matters that shape the economy.
Now, Mr. Prime Minister, I must tell you one thing. You have the 30 most top-notch private sector people. You must take them into confidence. Unfortunately, it's not happening. They have at least one bit of knowledge, otherwise they would not have come to this place to become the 30-odd people. We have the former Secretary of the President. I'm sure he will agree with me. We are people to reckon with. So at least whenever you go overseas or lead in the country on a delegation, to tell and advise, get some advice from these people. I'm going here. What have you to say? What can you suggest? So this will help you to broaden your vision and broaden things that are happening day to day.
Wickremesinghe says he is aiming for a 7% GDP growth next year with a long-term view of becoming a high-income country.
We want to expand employment, give the people high incomes, improve productivity, increase competitiveness and go for growth. Central Bank says we'll have about 6% next year, but I want to push for 7%, because then by 2025 we can double the GDP, double the income, and again in about another 8 years, double it again. So we become a high income country. So that's what we are doing. But at the same time, we will keep our attention on the rural economy to stabilize it and modernize. So this is what we are planning, and I plan to work together with you all. So I will be calling up, starting from tomorrow, the private sector. But I also have a policy, nothing for nothing. You invest the money and I'll work with you. Correct? I have to create jobs. And as you invest, I have to ask you, ease of doing business, some of you will take part in those committees, report to us, how to promote investment, how to promote the different sectors. So all that is there. And I will talk to you all. We'll decide what we have to do and go ahead.
Finance Minister Ravi Karunanayake, the man in the spotlight, claims that the Inland Revenue Department, the government's tax collector, has doubled the number of tax files since the new unity government came into power. Let's take a look at what the minister had to say.
Finance Minister Ravi Karunanayake told a budget forum organised by the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce that the Inland Revenue Department, Customs and the Excise Department has been instructed to go after tax evaders. The Inland Revenue Department said it is carrying out island-wide raids even after office hours to get more people to pay taxes.
We have 23 million people. We have only 43,000 corporate tax files. We have only 21,000 VAT files. We have only 25,000 NBT files. Country has only 9% of tax files compared to the population that we have. Isn't this disgraceful? This is where we call upon a slight change in the attitudes that are there. Pay or you call and ask as much as you want from the government, but don't pay nothing and ask for everything. That has been the change that we want to inculcate. But the people who pay really pay. And we regret that, because that is a sinful act, because they are called, everything comes on the actual taxpayer. But I have instructed the Inland Revenue Department, the Customs, the Excise and the Treasury to be vigilant and go after everybody who is not paying, and there will be no leniency given towards that.
On the other side of this break, Biz1st Review 360 catches up with a tax expert on the 2017 budget. Shamin Tilakaratne, thank you very much for speaking to Biz1st Review 360. Let me start off by asking you, there are some experts who have billed the 2017 budget as a survival budget, that the government, the state, is in dire financial straits and they need to raise as much money as they can to pay off their debts. Do you agree, when you look at the tax proposals that the government has put in, and when you look at the budget overall, do you agree that it's a survival budget?
Well, Navi, the fact of the matter is that our tax to GDP ratio is low, and we need to increase our revenue collection. And if you look at the overall tax policy of the government, of especially the Prime Minister, the move is towards increasing direct taxes and increasing the ratio of direct taxes to indirect taxes from 60 to 40. Not immediately, but over the years. So, in view of all that, in that context, yes, there has been this time a broad basing of taxes. We see a limitation on exemptions being given, and a slight hike or an increase in some of the rates, which I think, yes, will contribute towards an increased revenue collection.
Shamin, on the subject of exports, you mentioned tax exemptions that no longer exist. One of the exemptions that has been removed is on the export of services, which has gone from exempt to around 14%.
That's right.
Do you think our export sector is quite fragile? Do you think that this will have a detrimental effect on exports?
Well, as you rightly said, this increase is only on export of services. So we have two sides. We have the exports of goods and the services. And if you look at it over the years, the export sector has been enjoying quite a few concessions and quite a few incentives. It's time now that they come out of that and contribute towards the economy. And the exemption, yes, there was a fairly broad exemption, but based on some of the discussions that have been taken place the last week, that exemption won't be taken off wholesale, so it'll remain for certain sectors like the IT BPO sector, which is a little fragile because of competing countries with us. So perhaps the exemption will remain for such sectors, but the general sweeping exemption cover will be taken off. And it's about time, I think, that it's taken out and people step up and move out of that mentality of always wanting a concession, always wanting a handout and a help out. It shouldn't, I think, affect it to such a great extent, because it's still just 14%. I mean, compared to other countries, that is still a very low rate. It's about time, as I said, that
It's about time that they start contributing to the economy. Yes. Let's move on to one of the subjects that maybe our viewers will be more concerned about, which is the personal income taxes. The government was talking about broadening the tax net. They've introduced new categories, and also for secondary incomes, so professional services, etc. Can you give us a little bit of clarity on how this will impact ordinary people?
Okay, well, in the past, pre-budget, individual taxations has been at a very low rate, both for employees, professional and those earning professional income. I mean, it was at a maximum rate of 16%. And where professionals are concerned, they hardly moved into the rate of 16% even, because they were given a generous tax slab of 25 million with a corresponding rate of 12%, and most of them never jumped that. And this concession was given especially with respect to professionals, in order that they draw them out and they contribute and pay their taxes. But again, from the discussions that have been taking place so far over the past week, it appears that that has not been achieved, and the professionals have not come up and stepped up and paid on their full income. So now it's time to move away from that concession and broad base the tax, make it equal to everyone, make employees, professionals, people in self-employment and proprietorships all pay the same rate of tax, which is a maximum of now moving up to a maximum of 24%. Again, it's not such a big jump when you compare it to other countries.
The finance minister has claimed that the number of tax files has doubled since the unity government came into power in 2015, January. When you look at the revenue that has been collected and the current financial situation, does it reflect a doubling of the number of tax files?
Well, I mean, the numbers of these tax files and things like that, I've heard various numbers given at various forums, so I don't know whether anyone really knows how much exactly the number is. But certainly there has been a doubling, has been at least an increase. I don't know whether it's a doubling, but there has been an increase in the collection, and that has been confirmed. I think this is to do mostly with the introduction of RAMIS, and it's not been fully implemented yet, but it will be in the future, and it will be then connected to other government offices like the Motor Traffic Office and Customs and all that. So it's going to be a little bit difficult for people to move out of the system in the future. They will be caught in the tax net, and if it has not doubled so far, it probably will in the future.
On the subject of increasing the tax revenue, Sri Lanka is notorious for revenue leaks in the tax system. Yeah. You mentioned RAMIS and that it has done some work. Once it is fully implemented, maybe we'll see. But as an expert on taxation policies, what would you like to see the government do in order to increase efficiency in tax collection and also to plug those leaks?
Well, one is to broad base the tax base, just not to go after the few people who pay, but to look into the other areas and, as I said, sort of have a connection or a connect to places like the motor traffic, the land registry and things like that. So if, a spending is done in any one of those places, you buy a land somewhere and a red flag is raised. So then okay, something we need to look into. So it's all about managing information, trying to go after the right people, not only just the few people who have, voluntarily stepped up and paid. Look around you, move the net a little further.
Shamin, thank you once again for speaking to Biz1st Review 360. It's been an enlightening discussion. Thank you very much. Welcome back to Biz1st Review 360. On tonight's Speak Your Mind segment, we are hearing the voices of the business community on the proposals of the 2017 budget.
Well, I wouldn't call it a people-friendly budget, neither, will I call it a corporate-friendly budget. We see the government introducing, little taxes here, there, for the government to be able to raise revenue. So obviously it's the people and corporates who have to pay that. So obviously, given the situation, we need to understand that it is, very hard for the government to be able to, do anything better as well. But in terms of budget, since recently the trend we have seen is that government come up with various suggestions, proposals before the budget in order to raise revenue. And through the budget speech, they talk about, things, that would help the people. And then after the budget, if they need more revenue, they come up with, various other supplementary proposals and things like that. So budget per se now is not a document that covers, one full year. Instead, a document that talks about part of the story. Unlike, say, 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Well, government certainly has to, bring in money from out, for which the corporates have to be encouraged and given, due place for them to be able to go out and, bring value into our country. But instead, if you really see what has happened, the corporates have had to basically compete for their share within the given pie, which doesn't really help the country's economy. There are so many local companies and even multinationals who have invested in the country looking at export markets, and we've seen some of those companies bringing in revenue in non-traditional areas. So I guess government needs to take a good look at these companies, learn from these success stories, and encourage them to further expand, while motivating others who haven't crossed borders in order to cross borders and then bring in revenue to the country.
Well, we are still looking at it. I think it's a bit too early to comment about the budget, which is just a few days old. So as it progresses, especially with the readings in the Parliament, we should be able to get more knowledge about the proposals. I think 2016, this budget appears to be more progressive than the one we had in 2015. So I think they're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I think the budget 2017 is a good budget. It's a progressive budget. You could analyze a budget in many forms. There are positives and negatives, but we must understand the budget is all about earning as well as spending. So I think there are some good decisions made for the future, especially in terms of education. So I think it's a good budget, and compared to last year, definitely a good budget. And the important thing is to be consistent, and I hope consistency will prevail in this budget.
I've seen the same statement repeated by the respective finance ministers. So the thing is this, you come up with these kind of statements, and at the end of the year, you don't sort of do a look back to see what exactly has happened, whether these ideas, have been implemented in the proper manner to be able to achieve, results. So that look back is not something, that has happened in our country. So before you think of the year ahead, it's always good for you to look at the proposals you introduced at the beginning of that year and see how well you have fared against those set goals.
I think the budget is a vehicle that will give us a certain amount of certainty and a policy and a direction. That is what is required for the private sector. So as far as that is clear and the government stick to that, then the private sector will have the enabling environment. So where tourism is concerned, I think there will be a tremendous opportunity for this country, looking at the global politics, geopolitics and the situation in other parts of the world. Traditional tourism strongholds like Egypt and all the Mediterranean countries are affected. I think Sri Lanka has a very, very good opportunity to get a large portion of it and maintain this 20% growth year on year. So which means that, the numbers will come in and the infrastructure is actually being built, especially the roads and the airport expansion, and the rest of the enabling environment can take place, then I think the private sector can do a more proactive role in getting the best buck for our money that is invested. I think I don't think we should depend on the government to do any destination marketing. The private sector will have to come forward now and do their own marketing, and then make sure that the country is promoted. The days which we wait for the public sector or tourist board to go out, because they are public funds, they need to actually maybe worry about so many factors. So it's very difficult for them to be doing all that. I think it's time that the private sector get organized and then move forward, investing that dollar into respective markets so that your message can be heard.
And that's a wrap of tonight's program. Don't forget to look us up on Facebook by searching for Biz1st Review 360. That's Biz1st with a 1ST. I'll see you again, same time, same place next week. Until then, good night and good luck.